in all likelihood, you have way more than that inside your home, especially in a total burn down situation like this, where you've literally lost everything inside. So
Is this
oftentimes,
all right, video? Is it all right we videoed this?
sure.
Okay,
Yeah.
because I want to bring this back to some other folks.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
So what I was saying is that the contents, there's often a big gap in between what's covered under your policy and what it ends up costing. Another big thing is, and I was talking to John over here, oftentimes you have things that are literally irreplaceable. Mementos from grandparents or parents, wedding dresses, family photos, things like that. There are provisions under the law that allow for what they call cherished possessions to be valued and accounted for. And again, that's not typically factored into a contents coverage under an insurance policy. So that's a big gap that we often see. The other one, especially living in a wooded, forested area like many of you, you've obviously got huge mature trees and landscaping, all throughout the town. And a typical homeowner's policy is going to cover a small fraction. It's usually 5 or 10% of your coverage A will be for landscaping costs. And that's fine if you live in a tract home and you had a couple of little bushes and flowers. $10,000 or $15,000 may be enough to compensate you for that. But in your situation where you're dealing with 80, 100-year-old pine trees and oak trees and so forth, those are incredibly expensive to replace. So oftentimes we see that the coverage that's provided under a homeowner's policy is drastically insufficient to put back what was lost. Sure. Yeah, absolutely. Sure. They offered to give me a microphone, but I told them I didn't need it. So, the other big area that oftentimes is not covered at all by homeowners policies that we see frequently in a wildfire situation like this is erosion damages. Unfortunately, this fire happened right before the rainy season. As you can expect, when a wildfire blows through like this, it takes out not only homes and structures, it takes out plants and trees, but it also gets into the soil and into the root structure. So all the things that were holding the ground together when it would typically rain are now gone. So we see a lot of fissures open up, debris and mud flows. You may have seen the news last year down in Southern California where people lost their lives. So it's a very dangerous thing. It's a very expensive thing, especially for those folks who are looking to rebuild, to shore everything up and ensure that the soil condition is right to put a home back on it. And that generally is not covered at all under a homeowner's policy. The last thing that's generally not covered, or isn't ever covered, is the emotional toll that this takes on everybody. I realize that many of you, I've heard some awfully harrowing stories from folks who are literally being chased by flames out of town and had minutes to pack up and evacuate. I can't imagine what that must be like. People who are fearing for their lives and ditching their cars and running down the road. I mean, it's just awful. Obviously, your homeowner's insurance isn't going to provide coverage for any of the emotional trauma that you've suffered for that, or any of the emotional trauma that you and your family have suffered for losing your home. So what we do and what we specialize in is we look to those uninsured losses. In the case of someone who doesn't have insurance, obviously it would be everything, but for the case of folks who have insurance, it would be that gap between what your homeowner's policy covers and what the actual cost of your damages are. And we've got teams of experts to help us evaluate, the cost to rebuild your home. We've got arborists who can help us with valuing the landscaping and the trees that were lost. We've got soils experts who can come in and evaluate soil conditions and erosion damages. So we'll work with you to work up those damages. And then we would be looking to PG&E and others that may be responsible to fully compensate you for those losses. So that's, kind of the 30,000 foot view in terms of what we do. If anybody has any specific questions that we can open it up, I'm happy to chat and answer anything I can. Yes, sir.
We own two lots, actually. It's an acre. Of course, the bottom part of our house is just nothing but trees. So the other lot is nothing but trees. And I'm sure that our insurance is not going to cover that. So
They're two separate legal lots, you're saying?
yes,
Do you know whether the lot that had trees had insurance on it at all? Was there any outbuildings on it?
I'm sure it didn't.
So yeah, in that case, you'd be uninsured in all likelihood for the landscaping on the other lot. And as I mentioned, I was surprised when I first started doing this, when we started working with arborists. You kind of take trees for granted. They're all over the place, and you think, well, how expensive can that be? But when you're dealing with large, mature, pines and oaks and things like that,
We have two great big redwood trees.
redwoods,
Lots of big pines.
I mean, those are tremendously valuable, tremendously
Ones
valuable.
that you can't even get your arms around.
Wow. So yeah, those are things that, we would work with to place a value on, and, because you're entitled to have put back what was there. Obviously, it's gonna be difficult to find a 150-year-old redwood, but as close as we can get, and obviously get the compensation.
All of our land is on a hillside too, so the erosion is a huge factor for us.
It's gonna be a huge factor for us. We're gonna have, we're the ones furthest down in the hill, so we got houses above us that we there's a cement wall that's put in to kind of guard that, and their erosion's gonna come right down on our property.
Yeah, and unfortunately, you're not gonna be alone, I'm afraid. I think that's gonna be a big issue up there, once the rains start coming in. And, I'm sure they'll have engineers come in and look at it and do what they can to try and mitigate that,
But
but.
we're not even aware that we can even rebuild where we're at. But a church company says we have to rebuild back,
Right,
is that where we're at. We
Right.
can't just take the money and run. They won't let us do that.
right.
Mm.
Yeah, that's true. You have to rebuild at the same location. Again, that's kind of what I'm talking about. So we would, work up with a team of experts. And even if, it got washed out or there was some erosion damage, we would bring soils people in and say, here's what it's gonna cost us with that.
Are you having to get all of these people in to look and survey the damage and all that before we can start doing cleanup? Or do we have to document what work is being done? I mean, we've got trees to move, we got, stuff to drag out and chop up and get the heck out of there. Are we gonna be having to wait around for any inspectors or anything, or do we just take pictures of everything, or what's the best way to
Yeah,
go?
what I tell people is, don't wait on us.
Yeah.
If you've got stuff that you need to do, it's much, much more important that you get things back to the way it was. So go forward, pictures are fine.
Mhm.
If you're cutting down trees, oftentimes there's a stump there, unless you're going
Right.
up a stump too. So our arborists can look at that and determine, age and size and so forth. So yeah, pictures would be great before you did any work, and then we can provide those to our folks.
I know this is a big, overwhelming thing here, but we probably don't have any idea how long it would take for these people to be able to come out and look at the properties?
Our experts?
Yes, your experts.
It's usually after the government clears everything. I have no idea how long it's gonna take to get back in. I've heard there's been some infrastructure damage up there.
Yeah.
I heard their water facility was damaged, or destroyed. So I don't know the answer to that at this point.
Mhm.
Once we're allowed in there, we'll start sending people as soon as we can.
Mhm.
So whether that's a month from now, or 3 months from now, or 4 months from now, I honestly don't know
Okay.
at this point. Yes, sir.
Someone told me that there was a California law now that the insurance company cannot mandate that you rebuild. Can you speak to that? You don't know?
I'm not aware of that, no. There is, just a fair market value, so if you were planning to, I think you were saying, just take your money and run, it's generally a lower amount, that they pay as opposed to the cost to rebuild, so the replacement value is generally higher than what the fair market value is. So, if you were talking to your insurance company and you told your claims adjuster, listen, I'm getting out of here, I have no intention of rebuilding, oftentimes that can adversely affect the adjustment of your claim, and if you intend to participate in a lawsuit, it can tend to diminish your damages. So, what I generally tell people is, just keep an open mind. If you don't have to commit to anything, if your insurance adjuster is asking those types of questions now, you don't have to make an election, a week after the fire broke out. So just tell them you're still deciding, and you'll make a decision when the time's right.
And I know in our contract, I don't know about yours, but I looked over it, and there's kind of 3 parts to it. One is if you don't rebuild, first of all, we have a 25% rider on it to rebuild if it costs more than our policy. They said, to me, you don't have to rebuild. On there it says you don't have to. And secondly is that, part of it is that if you don't rebuild, they won't give you that 25% extension. However, if you go to a contractor and get the contractor to give you an assessment of how much it would cost a bid to rebuild, if it's above that base you have, they will give you that 25% difference. So say it's 400,000 and you have another 100,000 to rebuild for like cleaning up and all that stuff and extra cost. They will say, the contractor say, hey, it's gonna cost you 650,000, they'll give you that extra 100. So it comes under, so Some contracts are better than others, but ours seem to be okay, and we've been lucky, I guess, on our insurance. But really, the first question was, we have some, trees that look like they've gotten really scarred badly with Doug firs, and a black oak is really destroyed. When they take those down, some trees will die within a year or two also. Are you going to include that in there too? The arborist would know, is the tree so scarred that, hey, it's gone, you gotta take it down too?
Yes, yeah. It's my understanding the Forest Service is up there doing that right now. They're marking trees that need to come down as an immediate hazard right now. And then there's ones that they're planning to cut down, you know, in the coming weeks and months. So yes, absolutely. Any damage that was caused by it, whether it falls today or 2 years from now, so long as we can show it was caused by the fire, would be an element of damage.
And in our contract, I don't know if you guys looked at yours, but also if we don't agree to the, amount, they can go into arbitration between the two of us. And if you don't still agree with that, you can go to court, and it says very clearly, the judge can decide, and that means civil court in California. And guess what? It goes to Butte County, correct? Am I wrong? It would be, it occurred, you've got a court with how many people are affected, 12 jurors sitting there? Good luck, insurance company, good luck. I don't know if you want to go that, I'm just saying, I wouldn't roll over.
So to that point, and I don't know what everybody's experience so far has been in terms of the claims process. I've heard kind of mixed, you know, for the most part, I've heard positive stories that the claims examiners are doing their job and they're working hard and trying to get money to you guys as quickly as they can. For the few that maybe aren't, I would expect them to come around. So just be patient. When you're dealing with a disaster like this, especially one of this scale, I don't think any insurance company out there wants the negative publicity or blowback from wrongfully denied coverage or trying to lowball people with their coverage or anything. So one of the services that we provide, if you guys decide to be clients of ours, is we've got an in-house on-staff adjuster who spent about 30 years in the insurance industry, in the last 10 or 15 adjusting wildfire claims specifically. We offer her name's Janet Watkins, we offer her as a free service to our clients. So if you have any insurance issues, or you're just wanting help interpreting your policy or what you're entitled to, or my adjuster said this, what does it mean? She's happy to sit down with you, on the phone with you, whatever the case might be, to help you explain your policy and work through some of the insurance issues. That's a free service for all of our clients.
A lot already think we've got problems with our insurance company because we called them and started an adjustment. Took them a week to get us $1,000. So we didn't get it for a week after the fire. And so we just barely got that. We called them yesterday and wanted to get assistance for moving into a house that we moved into. And they say we have to have a renter's contract in order to be able to come up with some money to do that. So it's like, okay, help me out here a little bit, you know?
So there's kind of two components to that. In most homeowners policies, you've got something called ALE, additional living expense, and that's generally a 2-year benefit that will provide for housing assistance or rental for 2 years while your place is being rebuilt.
Well, yeah, they told us a figure on that, and we're okay with that, but it's like dragging their feet on giving us the money to do what we needed to get done.
One thing I've seen, some insurance companies have an emergency fund where they'll give you, $5,000 or $10,000 just to help out. The more typical scenario would be they would give you, in essence, sort of an advance on your contents claim. So let's say you had $100,000 in contents coverage. They would say, hey, we'll give you $10,000 of that. It's going to reduce your contents coverage now to $90,000, but just to give you $10,000 so you can live on while you're getting things sorted out. So that may be something to explore with them. Again, these hiccups early on are not unusual, but generally speaking, in my experience, it gets smoothed out as time goes on. So I'm sorry to hear you're dealing with that, but fingers crossed it'll start smoothing out here. Yes, sir.
So my question is not PG&E and the fact that I think everybody here for the last month or two is receiving warnings via text. Was there a method of procedure that they didn't follow, or why wasn't there an alert system? Why wasn't anyone notified at the point that the time that the incident occurred? So are you aware of them reaching any sort of policy by not alerting the public within a 2-hour period from the start of the
certainly I could argue that could be negligent conduct, if they knew about it. They are required to report any issues with any of their lines to the Public Utilities Commission, which they did here. But I hear you. And in fact, I've heard from a lot of people who were getting those messages that power may be turned off, who were at home when the fire broke out, power's still on, so people are thinking everything's fine and good. So
Yeah,
you're
that's the
almost
way we
lulled,
were.
almost lulled into a false sense
Yeah.
of security.
And all of a sudden, she goes out to the newspaper, and house on fire, you know, so we knew we had to get out, we had about 15 minutes to get out.
Yeah.
The
And we're-
system's completely broken, because if they would've had a mass, like Amber Alert,
Or something, I mean, yeah, that's,
On your TV.
we'd have got notified, we'd have got a lot more stuff. Cause it was, fire was, like, had been murdered at 6 o'clock that morning, and it was 9:30 when we left. So we had, that would give us a lot of time to get things, but we didn't know until about 15 minutes when it was coming up the canyon.
Well, at 9:30, we were at the parking lot and the cell service wasn't even working, and 911 wasn't even working.
Well, but yeah, by then, our power didn't go out, until about 9 o'clock.
So, we couldn't do anything, the Amber Alert couldn't get in.
Did anybody's water shut off?
No, mine did, up to about 2 o'clock in Magalia.
Cause, my sister and her husband were trying to hold off our, mobile with the hose, and all of a sudden the water was shut off.
I think that was Paradise. Was it Paradise?
Old Magalia.
Old Magalia? Oh, yeah.
They shut it off from the power,
Did they?
from the water.
So it was going at 2 o'clock,
Yeah.
I was spraying down the neighbor's fence.
Yes, sir.
A little different question on coverage.
Sure.
My daughter has an insurance company that's back east. She asked, they said, you know, after a little bit of a fluff, they said, yeah, we'll send you, I think it's $5,000. But they wanna send us snail mail, and they did. She still hasn't received it. You know, I mean, it's
That's
going into a
what
paper.
we ended up having.
We have an address here in
Snail
Chico
mail.
as opposed to a Paradise address. He said, we don't have, I have another company, and they put it on a card for me. But it's taking, you know, it's, well, we can't direct deposit. I don't understand that.
They can wire transfer.
Yeah.
They can wire transfer.
2018.
And I don't know who your insurance or who her insurance company is, but oftentimes they'll get adjusters here in the field who can literally print checks on the spot,
So should she just maybe ask for a different adjuster or a manager?
or manager, yeah, and how to wire the money. Yep.
Okay.
But can I go back, oh, sorry, go ahead.
No,
Going back to your point, sir, about just not being alerted and just the total failure of that system. So Rob mentioned the California Public Utilities Commission, they're the regulators, they're the police over PG&E. And they just opened up a rulemaking on wildfire safety, and we're involved in that proceeding. I was just at the CPUC a few days ago. And that is actually, that is something that the CPUC is going to examine, and we're gonna have workshops on that. So just to, I don't know if that makes you feel better, but at least it's the
my
regulator.
thought is they breaking procedures.
Yeah.
It's silent, right?
Yeah.
So the procedure decision in terms of shutting off power is totally within their discretion. You know, they've got to weigh a bunch of different factors. I always point to, I'm from San Diego, my office is in San Diego. Our PG&E counterpoint is called SDG&E down there. And we had a big wildfire in 2007. And after that, SDG&E spent a lot of money undergrounding power lines, really boosting their infrastructure. And they came up with a lot of procedures and protocols for shutting off power in high wind events in susceptible areas. We haven't had a fire since. So those types of things, it can be done. It's not a hard thing to do, but there's arguments to be made on both sides of it, but it's totally.
Fire cameras, yeah.
And I'm sure you're.
Sirens.
Sirens, you know, like.
Yeah, yeah.
In fact, east, there's some communities that have still sirens, and in Idaho and Oklahoma, they do for tornadoes. What's the problem? You can hear a siren for miles up in that area.
It's not that
Canyons.
expensive.
They're not, and they could have sounded off the sirens. Everybody would know.
Terry?
I would like to comment on the water situation, at least in Magalia, with the Oro water. I spoke directly to them, and they are going house to house and turning off the water to all houses that have been destroyed, but they're leaving the water on the houses that are still standing.
Okay, that's good information. Yes? in terms of them posing any sort of public safety, oftentimes that'll be the Forest Service in conjunction with the county, who will come through and they'll mark and tag trees that pose an issue, and they'll cut them down.
And if they're not, you know, if it was black, or, you know, I don't know what their criteria are for, you know, what if it's not dangerous.
So then it would probably fall into the debris removal section of your insurance policy, which is oftentimes not a whole lot. So yes, in that case, if you're saying you think it's a personal hazard that you want to get rid of this tree, but for one reason or another, the Forest Service didn't mark it, then yes, it would be on you with your insurance. Yes.
So obviously PG&E is gonna have some hot shot attorneys on their side too.
They already do.
So I'm just wondering, are they gonna weasel out of all liability?
Two good questions. So at least right now, they're being represented by a firm out of New York called Cravath, who's the same firm that's representing them in the 2017 North Bay fires. We've dealt and worked with them, you know, just fine. Yes, they're a big firm, and yes, they're a New York firm. It hasn't been an issue. The law in California in situations like this, where a privately owned utility causes a fire, is very favorable to you. And it's almost a strict liability standard. So what we have to show is it was their equipment that was involved in starting the fire, and they're basically on the hook for it. So we don't necessarily have to show that there was negligent conduct, although in most cases we do also find that there was negligent conduct involved. It's not necessary. So in terms of them weaseling out of liability, particularly with what I know about this fire right now, it's early, but it's unlikely in my opinion right now. You know, things can certainly change as we learn more, but based on the information that I've got, I don't think
So
that's.
how much money were you gonna have to put up front in order to sign up with you?
Good question. Let me get your other one first and then I'll get that one. You asked earlier, how long is this process gonna take? Obviously it's early, it's hard to predict, and there's a lot of factors that can fudge the numbers one way or another in terms of length. Let me answer it this way. The 2015 fires in Butte County that happened were some of the fastest that I've seen in terms of from the start of the fire to the first settlement checks coming out, and that was about 9 or 10 months, which is exceedingly fast in these cases. Given just the scope of this and the number of homes and structures and people that were impacted, I would be shocked if it was that fast. I've been wrong before, and I hope I am here. I think it's more likely 18, 24 months would be kind of the window that I'd start to look at for resolution. And it could be longer than that, it could be shorter than that. It's hard to predict right now, and again, there's a lot of variables that play into it. But if it turns out that it's a relatively straightforward liability case and what we have bears out, you know, hopefully things can move along more quickly.
You're just talking about resolution of the insurance company's financial obligation to you, right? You're not talking about everything being normal again.
Of course, yeah. No, I'm talking about from a case standpoint. If you were to file a lawsuit against PG&E from start to finish, 18 months, 2 years, plus or minus. In terms of everything being normal up there, I haven't personally been up there. I've seen photos and talked to folks who have. I think it might be longer than that.
Yeah.
To put it that way, as I'm sure you all know.
Yeah, and I represented the city of San Bruno with the PG&E explosion, and it took, they're still, I mean, their homes are in place, but it's still, it was really raw, and that was in 2010.
Well, I've heard that Gallagher wants to do an infrastructure now of their sewer, they've been thinking about that for years. So they wanna put that in now, since this is a good opportunity to put that in and where they start building. So that might even delay our processes of being able to even get into work on our properties.
Yeah, you're right. And obviously that's not something that we, choose to do a big infrastructure project that could delay things.
So I was informed that before this event, that PG&E was already on the brink of bankruptcy. And if they do file bankruptcy, is that gonna how would that affect
Yeah, great question. One that's obviously on our minds too, and I'm not gonna lie to you, it's a concern. From what I've heard and read recently, I think it's becoming less and less likely, but again, this can shift dramatically based on stock prices and market factors and all kinds of things. So in 2017, the North Bay fires, they had an insurance policy of $800 million. And depending on what numbers you're looking at, I think the total exposure they're facing there is somewhere between 12 and 15 billion. So obviously there's a big shortfall between what's insurable and the amount that they're ultimately gonna have to pay. Here, they've got a $1.4 billion policy, and these numbers are really early, but I'm seeing 4 to 5 billion in potential exposure. I expect that to go up. So we've got the same situation where there's gonna be a shortfall there. I mean, you may have seen the Public Utilities Commission chairman came out 2 days ago. And the way that it works with utility companies is after a fire happens like this, and let's say PG&E pays out a sum of money to you and your neighbors, it can then go to the Public Utilities Commission and petition the Public Utilities Commission to pass through some of those losses to PG&E ratepayers to help subsidize basically their losses. I know it doesn't sound fair, but that's the way it works. Historically, the PUC has been very resistant to allowing that to happen, and has been very reluctant to allow PG&E and other utilities to pass that stuff through. The PUC chairman came out a couple of days ago and said that they, in so many words, that they may be more receptive to doing that, just given the gravity of both last year's fires and now this one, just to give PG&E the financial stability. If I had a crystal ball, I think it's more likely we're gonna see them on Capitol Hill, trying to get some more favorable laws, whether it's a pass-through law that, applies to every major fire that they're exposed to. They did try and get the law changed in terms of their liability period last year, last legislative session. They were successful in doing that. I don't think this is the fire for them to go do that again, but I wouldn't be surprised. So I think it's more likely they make a legislative push before BK is even discussed, and hopefully that won't be necessary.
What are the costs that we would, incur if we joined the suit and for some reason the suit is dropped or fails or PG&E goes bankrupt or whatever?
Zero is the short answer to that. And bankruptcy, a lot of people have kind of the misnomer that if they file for bankruptcy, all claims are wiped out and you guys are just left to hold the bag. Not necessarily true. You can still make claims in bankruptcy court. They've obviously got billions and billions of dollars in infrastructure and assets. How liquid that is, who knows? But there are claims that could be made there. It'd obviously be a lengthy process and nobody really wants that, but so just to that point. In terms of costs and fees, we work on a contingent fee. So it's contingent on there being a recovery. If a year from now it's determined that PG&E is not responsible, everybody walks away, you don't owe us a dime. Any money that we've expended up till then is the risk that we take in doing these types of cases. If we're successful and if there is a recovery at the end, then we take a contingent fee, and it's 1/3, which is pretty standard for these cases. I will say that this type of law with wildfire law is a little bit unique in the sense that it benefits you with fees and costs. So in a typical situation, you're in a car accident, let's say, and you recover $100 from the driver that hit you. The attorney's fees are generally deducted from that amount and you're left with whatever the net is. With this particular case and cases against public utility companies, we can sue under a cause of action called inverse condemnation. And inverse provides for, I won't bore you with all the legal details, but it provides for the recovery of attorney's fees and costs in addition to your economic damages. So the idea is that you're made whole, you're provided with the money that you need to rebuild your home and landscaping and so on, and then PG&E would pay attorney's fees and costs on top of that. So it's kind of a neat feature in the law that a lot of people don't realize. So,
Is there a contingency in the suit that you have to rebuild to join into the lawsuit?
no, there's nothing, no requirement on our part. I have seen, for example, in the Butte County fires in 2015, as part of the settlement, that homeowners were required to sign a declaration saying that they had the present intent to rebuild, and that would justify PG&E's payment of a higher amount. Present intent, you can change your mind, it's not anything that's necessarily binding, but that was just one example.
If we are moving on, we keep moving, I have the main bill down the road.
Sure.
Yeah, I talked to someone already and, I wasn't sure, so there's multiple firms, doing the same thing, and how do you know who to go with, or?
Great question. Yes, with our group in particular, there's 2 firms that make it up, but there are certainly a lot of other groups that either are up here now or will be up here shortly. What I always tell people, I think there's a couple of factors that you should look at. One, and I think probably at the top of the list, is experience in this area of law. There are going to be a lot of people, I'm afraid, who come up here who have never done a fire case before, who have no idea what the law is or how to do them. No knock on them, it's just, you know, if I were in your shoes, I would want somebody who's had some experience. And again, we've done every major wildfire case for the last, I don't know, 8 years, 10 years. So we've got the track record, we've got the experience, we've got the resources to be able to do these cases. So that would be at the top of my list. Two, I'd want somebody who I could trust, that I liked, that, you know, this is gonna be a 2-year road. So I wouldn't want somebody that I feel like I didn't get along with, or, you know, didn't have my best interests in mind. And then 3, I think you want somebody who's gonna be available. Obviously, there are gonna be thousands of people like you filing lawsuits. If I were in your shoes, I wouldn't want to just get lost in the shuffle and just be another number, you know, wherever. I'll provide you with my card, I'll give you my cell phone number. You guys are free, and all clients are free to reach me whenever. Although my firm is in San Diego, I'm up here all the time. It's a quick flight. If anybody ever needs to meet with me for any reason, I'm here.
Yeah, and I'm in Walnut Creek, so 2.5 hours.
I'd like to add to that as well. So the lady who had the sparking transmission lines, the original lady where.
Betsy Ann.
She's one of our clients. So that makes us unique. Nobody else is gonna have access to the information.
That's the reason I'm here, because we're friends.
Okay.
Yeah.
And we'll have an office here. We've got office space in Chico, downtown Chico. We've got some improvements to make, but hopefully in the next 2 or 3 weeks, we'll have an office here, and then Terry and Liz will be staffing that, as will Colin. So we'll have a presence here and people who can meet with you if you need to drop something off or swing by and ask a question. So we'll be around. So those would be kind of the top 3 things if I were in your shoes to look for in lawyers.
How's that, how's this work with insurance? You got insurance, they pay above what we've already gotten, what we'll get?
Good question. So what we do is totally in that uninsured gap, and that gap's gonna be bigger for some, smaller for others, but that's where we live. Your insurance is your insurance. We don't take any fees on any of your insurance proceeds at all, period, ever.
It's in the contract.
Yep. That's your money. You pay premiums on that for presumably a long time, and that's what you're entitled to. So there's no fees taken on that.
Say we don't like you for 5 years old. We're firing you, and you're gonna charge us the fee, or can we just drop you in time? I know,
There is a provision in there, so if you're welcome to drop us. I hope that's not the case, and I hope we serve you well enough, so that's not gonna be. It would depend on the time expended. You know, if you drop us a week from now, probably don't have a ton of time in the case. If it's 3 years from now, and we've got a bunch of expert fees and time invested, then it would be basically an hourly rate. We would have potential recovery in hourly fees.
So you would charge?
Whether or not we assert it or not would be a different story, but I personally can't think of a situation where we've ever done that.
I just wanna make sure.
I got another question. You say you're from one place and you're from that place. Do you have a firm here that's local?
So yeah,
Somebody office or something?
yes.
Because the reason why my question is because all of us here in this room are living from anywhere from 30 miles to 100 miles away from here.
Yeah.
So, you may have a meeting today, or we may call you on the phone, have to meet with you, but it may not coincide with these people's, they've got to be able to come somewhere to drop stuff off and do things.
I agree. Yes, we will have offices in Chico, downtown Chico, and if we have to open up other offices, if people end up settling in Marysville or Oroville or something, if a bunch of our clients are down there.
Or in Orland.
Or Orland, wherever the majority of our clients are, we're happy to look at office space to get a presence there, just to make it more convenient for you guys, absolutely.
So really, the last question that I have is, I feel like I'm kind of here representing the family of 4 homes. Our home, or me and my wife's, it may be still standing, we don't know. Could be smoke damage, I don't know, but I know 3 are completely destroyed. My mom's, wife's parents, grandparents, so I'm kind of here for them as well, and if I can give them your contact information, then that's not an issue, right, as far as.
Oh, absolutely not. No, of course not. Yeah, I'm available. I'll give you my cell phone number. You can call me anytime, text me, email, whatever.
And go through the process.
Yep.
You guys have a website?
Yes.
You can send that to us.
It's fireattorneys.com. It's our website address.
I was gonna ask you if you could speak for
more so, yeah. The only reason being is because he's not gonna get some of the benefits that you guys are gonna get being insured. He's gonna have to come out of pocket for whatever the cost is to rebuild. Entirely, there won't be insurance proceeds on that. I think more importantly for him personally, or her personally, is the additional living expense. You know, your insurance company is gonna provide for an apartment or a comfortable home, hopefully somewhere nearby, for 2 years. He or she is not gonna have that. So they're gonna just be, you know, out sort of blown in the wind in terms of trying to find housing and have to come out of pocket for that. So yes, I would also encourage anybody who's uninsured to file a FEMA claim. And help with some disaster relief. It's not a huge amount, but it's something to help people get back on their feet. They also have loan programs that can provide, I think it's up to $36,000 to help people recover and get a place to live and food, clothes, and all the things that people need.
And we dealt with that in Calaveras County too. Several people were uninsured.
I think you said the 200,000.
The FEMA?
Yeah.
I don't know if it's that high.
I think through SBA.
SBA does a loan program
Yeah.
to help you rebuild.
Oh, okay.
So they're two separate things. SBA is usually comes in a little bit later. So SBA will be a loan to help folks rebuild who are uninsured.
Okay, I had a question. I share property with two siblings, and my mom passed it on to us, and I signed this all up for FEMA. Well, they said something about like opting in or opting out. So like if you opt out, they basically give you a bunch of money to do what you want with. And if you opt in, then they'll prepare your lot to rebuild.
So what that's talking about is debris removal. So what will happen at some point, and I don't know how quickly this will happen, but at some point they're gonna have to start clearing these lots, and it's not as simple as going in there and just sweeping things up and putting it in a dumpster. There's a lot of toxins, there's a lot of building materials that are unhealthy, and as I mentioned, wildfires get into the soil itself, so it's not just the top layer that you see, it goes down. So they've got to assess, you know, water damage, things like that, and the longer it sits there, especially with rain, the more likely it is to kind of move down into the soil, which is obviously not great for the environment. So what they're talking about is at some point in the next several months, I would imagine, there's going to be debris removal that's required. In other words, people are going to have to start clearing their lots of all the debris and the toxins and so forth. You're certainly welcome to do that privately and go hire a contractor or a company to come in and do it. It's astronomically expensive. If you're insured, there is generally a provision, in fact, I can't think of a situation where there hasn't been. There's generally a provision in it for debris removal where they'll provide some amount of money. It's generally on the order of 15 or 20,000, 25 maybe on the high end. And then what FEMA will do is they'll partner typically with and will come in and it'll be an opt-in, opt-out program. And if you opt into the program, the Army Corps of Engineers will come in and they'll scrape your property and do the debris removal free of charge, no out-of-pocket cost to you. In exchange, you sign whatever you're entitled to under your insurance. So I'll give you an example. Let's say under your insurance policy, you have $15,000 for debris removal. And you opt into this program and you say, yes, FEMA, I'd like for you to do my debris removal. Even if it costs FEMA $100,000 to do that, they only get the $15,000 that's available under your property, under your insurance. In most cases, barring either you have some mega mansion up there or you're just a control freak who wants to have oversight over every little detail, generally for most people it's better to opt into that program, and that's generally what we recommend, but there are certainly unique situations where maybe that doesn't make sense.
Okay.
So,
You were saying something about, you caught me unawares here, you were saying something about the FEMA won't help you rebuild with, or give you money to, in other words, you get money from the insurance company, you have to pay off your loan. So you have to get another loan to be rebuilding it. Will they help you with that loan if you got insurance?
FEMA probably wouldn't be the right vehicle for that. You'd probably go through a traditional bank if you're insured. FEMA is generally geared, and there are exceptions to this, but generally geared towards the uninsured folks. And the loan that they give, which is again, $25,000, $35,000, is more for people who don't have that ALE, that additional living expense, to go get housing for the next year or so. Kind of get them back on their feet, provide them a little something. The SBA, which is a different program, would be sort of the uninsured mortgage loan, for lack of a better term, or construction loan to help rebuild.
So if the rates has went up, we were gonna have to pay a higher rate?
Yes.
To have our house rebuilt.
Yep. A lot of lenders are usually pretty good in situations like this in terms of working with you, whether it's a deferral or a modification on your existing loan. And then they'll work with you on construction financing and flipping it into a traditional mortgage. So they're usually pretty good, and they have some interesting, unique things, so.
So you're probably better off to stay with your own, or check that out first.
Yeah, or shop, traditional lending is probably the better way to go for somebody who's insured.
You talked about, I have a building, that I leased out that was not insured. Now, cleanup on that is, it's a business as opposed to residential, and FEMA actually said they don't do any cleanup, that we had to contact somebody else at the disaster center and sign up for it, opt in or opt out. It was a whole separate entity.
They usually do it together. It's not FEMA per se. They usually partner. It's typically the county who partners with them.
And we had to go in and sign up and say, yes, we wanted to do that. They haven't set that up yet, and they will soon. How does that work with a property that's uninsured?
You're saying that your business that you had, the building you had, didn't have insurance on it? That's a good question. I don't know the answer to that.
I heard from them, it may be just zeroed out, from California insurance guy there, William Sears said, they'll take the insurance, the 5% that you opt in, or they'll zero it out if you don't have it. Cause it's just, they're not gonna leave buildings there empty. They were saying 110 to 150,000 to clean a lot, just one lot. Businesses are, I'm thinking, with Safeway, yeah, it's gonna be millions to clean.
Yeah, I know with
But
residential.
I may be wrong, I'm just throwing that out.
This is not
The distinction,
residential.
that's what I'm saying, I don't know the distinction with commercial. I can say in a residential context, if you were uninsured, then they would still come in and do it, and that's kind of, they collect everybody's insurance policy money that has the debris removal in it.
What if they had a policy, my tenant has a liability policy in there, for like $1 million. Now, I don't know what all, would that cover cleanup?
Probably not, probably
Even though
not.
it's
I'd be happy to
inside.
take a look at it, but probably not.
Okay.
What about our second property? Did FEMA clean that up?
Was it damaged, like, there was no structures on it? you said?
I don't know yet, but I'm just asking the question. I'm sure it was because our house was on fire and we had all these big trees.
Probably,
Probably so.
yeah.
In the recovery of the, if you opt in on the program and they're entitled to what you recover from your insurance for debris removal, you said, do they get that directly from the insurance company?
Yes.
They don't ask us to put that up?
Nope, it would be, you would sign a form assigning your rights to that portion of your insurance proceeds to FEMA or the county or whatever entity, and then your insurance company would pay them directly.
My question is kind of more to the tax. Say you have, personal loss on your insurance, 200,000, but you don't have, some people have more, and I know we'll have more. And then this lawsuit, say we get 100,000. On tax wise, for the IRS, for loss, beyond that, do you think there's gonna be something set up through the Fed or the state that we can write off that difference? I know we can't write off, we already been reimbursed, through a lawsuit or insurance, but above that.
So I don't do tax law, that's an
Okay, so you
interesting
don't know.
question.
Yeah,
I don't feel comfortable getting into the intricacies of that.
Your service.
Your tax
She does
lawyer.
insurance. So I probably just need to check with the CPA.
I would check with the tax lawyer or CPA and see if there's
Because I know
some,
you can take a loss.
I know you can definitely take a loss,
Yes.
what the limits of that are, if there's little subtleties or ways
I'll
that you
check.
can.
And do you think there's gonna be legislation or law that might come about?
Not
Some of these cases
not that I've heard of yet, but who
that
knows?
may take care of, like they have Hurricane Katrina and other big hurricanes, they've given a lot more. Anyway, IRS, because I had lost all my tax records, everything. I have records for now, I have H&R Block, but all our records are gone. I had property that I sold and had, supporting documents gone. Did that be added into this lawsuit? I mean, the IRS could say, hey, you don't have enough supporting documents on something if they audit this. I'm not going into a lot of people
I
here.
have some information about that.
Do you?
I'm sorry to interrupt.
No, that's
I
good.
I was
Great.
looking into it yesterday and, because somebody had told me that we didn't have to pay income tax when they're in, it's not exactly the case. So, but they do actually have, expedited, they have a process for people that are victims of wildfires. And I noticed that the IRS has already got a pub that takes into account the Camp Fire. So, a pub, that's their publication.
Okay, so it's on IRS.gov.
Yeah, and I had your email, I would forward you what I found yesterday, but I don't want to alarm you, things we're confused about, so like, I think that if there's a certain amount of gain from your insurance because of it, you have
They
to
can
kind of.
tax it, yes, like
Yes,
it
they can
becomes
tax
unearned
it.
incomes.
But
Yeah.
they also have an expedited process will then get you your past returns, past returns, people that are victims of
But not
fire.
supported
And they,
documents.
well, no, probably not. Well, I don't know. I didn't see that specifically, but just to let you know that.
Yes, sir.
I'd like to revisit the, Darren inquired about the mortgage, the paying off the mortgage. It's my understanding that you do not have to pay, if you're gonna rebuild, you do not have to pay off your mortgage. You can rebuild with the money they give you and you can continue to pay.
Yeah, that's kind of what my point was. Depending on your lender, most are very creative. Obviously, they're sort of in the same boat with you in the sense that what secured their loan is now gone and much, much less valuable. So they don't necessarily want to lose you, and I think they're more inclined to work with you to come up with a solution. But yeah, I've seen it where they'll switch it into construction financing and then convert it back to a traditional loan once the new home is rebuilt.
Got another question. FEMA, you're talking about FEMA. When we signed up over the phone the other day, they got talking about income, and we think we give them the wrong income because we use $2,000 of our income, but it comes off our capital every month. We give them that. Is that gonna factor in of them not being able to help us because we give them too much income?
Maybe. The fact that you're insured, I think, is probably gonna be a bigger hindrance. So FEMA's only gonna come in and help if you're not insured for something. If you didn't have ALE for some reason, or if you didn't have, some provision in your policy that wasn't provided. There is an appeals process with FEMA. So if you get an initial denial, you can appeal it and say, whoops, I put the wrong amount down, we're actually X instead of Y, and see if that makes a difference. But I think it's
That
more.
wasn't our income, we're retired, and we're taking off of our capital.
Right. Yeah, I would, in all likelihood, from what I've heard, they're gonna probably deny you just because you have insurance, at least the first go around. But on that appeal process, I would definitely raise that issue.
Okay.
Well, can we touch a little bit more on, the various resources? I know you talked about FEMA and that, and just how the new processes that are, government, programs are often difficult to pretty much take to the feet and other resources that you need more.
FEMA and SBA are kind of the two big ones, especially early on like this. Obviously, there's gonna be a Red Cross and a lot of other more benefit and benevolent organizations that are coming in to provide relief funds and donations and things. But in terms of programs to opt into, those are kind of the big two, at least initially. I don't know whether Calorie or anybody would do something. So there may be other state-funded programs that will step in and do similar things to FEMA. Again, it's not a lot of money generally under these programs. It's not gonna be enough to go be a windfall to you and rebuild and, life is back to normal. But it's just kind of little things to help get you along, especially in these early phases.
Next year's, building?
Yeah.
We went yesterday and it's great, really is great, guys. You need to go in because we went in and the tax assessor's office is delaying our taxes.
Yeah.
So, you can sign up immediately, they'll take care of it right then and there. There's DMV there, there's CalVet there, there's all kinds of services. I couldn't believe they were really great, so I'm just kind of.
Yeah, for those who haven't heard, there's a community services, I forgot what they call it.
The Red Cross is also giving out, certificates of knowledge and gas to people that need it, yes. And all you had to do was show them give them your FEMA number, they would pull it up and then give you a card.
Awesome.
That's great.
And then if you, I didn't need it, you could give it to somebody that really needs it.
And Walmart is also handing out $100 Visa cards to home victims at the Ross. No, it's not Walmart, it's a fundraiser that accumulated gift cards. So they're handing these out to victims.
And I definitely think there'll be more and more of that coming in events and fundraisers hosted by the county and others who will do big benefits for survivors. So, yeah.
Would those who qualify for FEMA assistance, would that money be considered again, or part of your recovery, or is that separate?
Totally totally separate, totally separate. Yeah, so there's no fees, we don't have any part in that. Again, any money you receive from your insurance company or FEMA or SBA is totally separate from any lawsuit.
I'm sorry, can I have a business card?
Sure. No problem.
Thank you.
Good luck.
You too.
Any other specific questions I can answer? Let me touch on one more thing that I just jogged my memory. I know several people have mentioned businesses and things like that were impacted. Obviously, with the entire town devastated the way it has been, I imagine there's gonna be quite a few people, maybe business owners or people who visited businesses. Lost income is also a huge component that is not insured, period, at all. Some people, I haven't heard of anybody yet in this particular case, some people have business interruption insurance, which will provide some small benefits. So if you were a business owner, hair salon or hardware store or something, it would provide for a few months of business interruption, and then it would terminate. So it's generally not a very long-term solution for folks whose business have burned down, who won't be back up for, a year or two. But any lost income, lost wages, that would all be part of any lawsuit. That's part of your economic damage.
With that said, my wife's work, obviously totally gone, to lose that income. She would, you just get her information and process and go and.
Yeah, and it's a lengthy process. This isn't gonna all happen in the
Right.
first month, but if you decide to retain us, then yes, we would work with you. There would be a more robust intake process where we gather a lot more information and kind of identify which experts are gonna need to dive in. And then over the course of the next few months, start doing that.
Is there a retainer fee then?
No retainer. There's nothing out of your pocket at all. There's no retainer fee. We don't charge hourly fees. You're not responsible for costs until and unless there's a recovery.
How long are you in town?
Me personally, I leave today, but I'll be back up on Monday. I'll be up here a lot. I'm not exaggerating, 2-3 times a week.
I mean, cause I like to home and think about it, talk to my wife.
Sure,
and what
no,
happened to it.
absolutely. Yeah, and it's a big decision. I'm not trying to, hard sell anybody or anything. It's a big decision. People ask me all the time, how long do I have? Should I wait? Should I file now? What's the benefits? And what I say is, the biggest decision you're gonna make is whether you wanna participate or not. There are some folks who just, for one reason or another, don't like lawsuits. They don't wanna participate. They just wanna forget about all this and move someplace else. There are a host of reasons. But once you make the decision that this is something you wanna participate in, there's absolutely no reason to wait. You have up to 2 years for property damage, personal injury claims. So there's a long time to potentially file, but I don't think personally there's anything to be gained by waiting, 18 months from now to file a lawsuit. I think, in fact, in some instances, it may be more beneficial to file early. Sometimes when resolution comes around, they'll often take, the cases that were filed first and look to resolve those first. So, once you make that decision, I realize it's a big decision, talk to who you need to talk to, but once you make that decision, in my view, there's no reason to wait.
Can we just sign up online?
Yeah, I've got retainer agreements here too. I'll be happy to be with you after. Okay.
Well, they sent, I talked to them, 2 nights ago, and Ed.
And where do we, yeah, I'll get one too.
Yeah, I've got these here. You can sign up right now if you'd like. Okay. Let me know if you have any questions. Cards?
No, I already.
Card.
Here's my card.
Yeah.
Give you this, guys.
All right.
So Rob, it doesn't seem like,
Yeah.
it doesn't seem like